All right. The recording's in progress, so anything you say can be preserved for posterity now. So anyway, we all know how the YouTube comment section can be, so watch it. Let's see. Planar composition example. Maybe sometime today it'll open. Rhino used to feel so light. These days I don't know if it's my computer or what. Maybe I need to go maybe make a clean install and only reinstall plugins that I actually use from time to time. Could be. All right, there we go. Okay, so here it is. Ta-da! All right, so for better or worse, we return to this thing. Let me just, and again, if you have anything to say, just shout at me to get my attention, because I can't see your faces to judge facial expressions. If I see some baffled looks or something, really bugs me that doesn't line up, and that whatever. Anyway, dang. Anyway, I feel like I probably no. I won't. I'll just leave it. But yeah, clipping planes. Right. So ways to cut sections and plans. First of all, what I'm going to do while I'm thinking about it is I'm going to create a new layer. I'll call that clipping planes. I'll just make a layer for various clipping planes here. I think it's set to be black in color, so we'll be able to see this stuff. All right, and so in perspective mode, I'm just going to type in clipping plane. Ta-da! It's going to ask me to select the first corner of a rectangle and the second corner or other corner of the rectangle. When I do that, it's going to create a planar rectangle. Okay, you can see it right here. That's its wireframe. And then you can see that there's a normal line sort of projecting out, telling me the direction that the clipping plane's looking. I'm just going to use the gumball. I have gumball on. I've had the plane selected. And I'm just going to move it in space. And you can see that since this is a horizontal plane, clipping plane, that I'm cutting in a plan right now, right? So cutting in plan orientation, I could move that through. Of course, I could always change the orientation of this plane. In this case, move it this way. Oh, come on now. There we go. And we could start cutting a section through our building, right? So this is a nice way of doing it. And I can look at it in perspective view. Let me toggle back to my four different viewports now. So one thing you might notice, I'll just, for instance, in my top view, I'll turn it to ghosted or shaded or something. It's not actually being cut in any of the other views, right? So let's just talk about that just for a moment. I wanted to record this in case you need to refer back to it. If I select the clipping plane and I go to the properties box, I have layers and properties and shaders, etc. So let's bring up the properties box. When I have my clipping plane selected, I can look through here. There's a special clipping plane properties or settings for it right here. Okay. So you can see, I can hold it down. I can say, oh, just some regular object properties. It says what layer it's on and etc. Any materials that's been assigned to it. But right here, clipping plane properties, I can flip the direction of the clipping plane. And I can toggle on which viewports I actually want the clipping plane to clip in. So if I turn on the top, then suddenly it'll clip the top as well. Top view or front view, right? And then I get to like a orthographic section I can begin to take, right? Okay. Now, one other thing that I mentioned when it comes to sections, I don't have a ground plane, right? So I'm gonna actually make a ground plane so I get that section, that ground line in my section. So let me just quickly try that. Just going to model that really quickly. Yeah. All right. So fantastic. Look at that. Okay. So here's my clipping plane. Let's say I want to cut a section right here. Actually, I'll just move it over just a little bit to right there. Man, I'll never get better than that. All right. So we can see things are being cut. Now let's talk about some of these conventions, right? So let's see here. We have, if I go to my tools, pull down and go to options, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go to my display properties again, my display mode properties. And let's look at 767 copy of technical. All right, 767 copy of technical. And I just want to look at some of these settings again. So, these haven't changed since the last time we adjusted these, right? Just going to drill in. So you can go to grid, you can go to objects. If I drill into objects, points, curves, lines, clipping planes are actually listed. So let's look at the clipping planes object. So I went into the display mode I want to change or modify. Then I went into objects and I found the clipping planes inside the objects. So in this case, it says, do you want to show fills? Things that are fills for things that are being cut in the clipping plane. And it says, so I have that toggle checked on, but then it says color usage, just use the viewport color, which is not helpful. So I'm going to say use a solid color. And I'll turn it to, I'll just make it stand out. I wouldn't advocate necessarily for this blue, this brightness of blue. Show edges, the planes color, edge thickness. So show edges, I'm going to say solid color, use black, and then I can give it a thickness, right? Shade, selected plane, color, usage. For the planes color, I'm just going to say 100% transparent. Go ahead and hit OK. Let's see if that changes anything here. So let's go. First of all, it would help if I actually set it to be example copy of technical, right? So I set it to that display mode so I can see the changes. So I'm just going to set it to that real quick. It'll take a minute because this is the technical view. So it's generating a hidden line drawing of it, and then actually I'm doing the white clay model rendering along with it. Sorry for the yawn. All right, so we're getting somewhere here. Let's see. Let's go to tools and let's look at those options again. Let's see if, as we change them, how they change. So I'm back in my copy of AAE 6767 copy of technical that we made a long time ago. Drilled into objects, clipping planes. And so the edge color, I can give it a different thickness. Let's see what happens when I beef up the thickness. Is that really dealing with line weight? Let's see. Okay, yeah. So I beef it up to 10 and I get a ridiculous line weight. Let's go to 4. And we get a less ridiculous line weight, but a line weight nevertheless that's darker than all the other lines. So things are being cut, and then we can fill them in with poche. I'm gonna maybe go with something less visually offensive. Let's see. Now, why did it not change to black? Actually, that looks like 255 would be white. What in the world? Okay. I think Rhino's is drunk. Let's go with RGB sliders. Let's go zeros all the way across. See what happens there. This is frustrating. Why is it not turning black? I don't ask for much, but come on. Oh, there it goes. Maybe it was just being slow on me. I don't know. Whatever. If you wanted to do a hatch, I'm not exactly sure what we would do. Let me see. Planes material. If we could make a render material that's a hatch, that would be kind of interesting. Let's see what happens here. Oh, I don't have anything set, so it just becomes okay. Yeah, never mind. Excuse me. Right. So anyway, here it is. Right. Now it's debatable whether I need all those hidden lines or not. I'd probably turn those off. They're kind of getting to be a distraction. Right. So maybe I hit OK. Oh, wait, actually, maybe I just go to curves. Let's see, lines, hidden line color usage. And I say width and pixels 0. Oh, come on now. Don't do that to me. Can I just not set them to 0? Hidden line. Oh, maybe it's just inherent to this. It's going to show hidden lines. That's annoying. So one thing I could do is I could always go into rendered and, you know, sort of look at that. Let's look at these settings instead. If you're looking at objects, there's clipping planes as well. Show fills, solid color. I need to actually show this planes color. Let's set that to solid color for show edges. Give it a line weight of 5. Why not? Planes color 100. Let's do that. Let's see what that looks like, right? So I can go back in, I can start to play around carefully with my different display modes. Right. So that's with no line work, but just sort of adding poche and doing the rendered mode, right? Which is another valid, completely valid way of looking at this. That plane is showing up. You know, I can get rid of that. I can just turn the plane off, the layer with the plane off. Now, for some stupid reason, I put the ground plane on that layer as well. Let me just move that to a different layer. Come on. Really? There we go. All right. Ay. Okie dokie. Now I can turn that plane, clipping plane layer off. Then I bring this into Photoshop or Illustrator. I can add more black fill in that ground if I want, or, you know, do whatever I need to. Right. So again, there's more than one way to do these things, depending on what you think best articulates your idea. Right. Okay. So again, I could now turn this the opposite direction. Let me turn the clipping planes layer back on so I can see my plane. Let's look at plan, and then we'll look at elevations, and we'll even address that that question that Bijan had earlier, right? Okay, there's
another one real quick.
yeah.
If you hadn't gone to the rendered setting and changed the color of that clipping plane to black, would it have not shown under render?
Yeah, so I have to set that stuff, right? So for some reason it was saying just use the viewport color, which is ugly. And you know, like I want the contrast. So in that case, yeah, I made my own render mode. Yeah, I did this in my just made the display mode and changed those settings there in the tools. Right. So here we have a section, just a plan in perspective. So just so you know what you're seeing. So say that again. I'm kind of curious if I really addressed your question or not, Bijan. And while really quickly, also just lightly, I'll just say, you know, you can set that to Axon, or I could just go to top view, right? Let's make sure I have that clipping plane open. I can set the top view and set the top view to rendered. Oh yeah, look at that. Right. And so I can start to see, let's turn that clipping plane off. Right. I can start to see the shadows being cast on the ground through openings, etc. Right. Get a little bit of soft shadows and things like that here. Excuse me. Again, if I go to the render settings, I can actually turn on the sun as well. Oh, I guess my sun is actually on. Huh. If I turn that off, I just get the soft shadows. Right. So that's kind of your preference and how you want to sort of show these things and how good they look, honestly. Yeah. All right. But again, once you have something like this, you can capture to file, whether that's a section or a plan or a section perspective. You know, again, I could come in here. Let's see. Let me turn my clipping plane back on and select it. Let me just rotate it around again in section. And so again, I could again tell it to sort of show this in front view as well. Turn front view to rendered.
Will that post field show up in Make 2D?
Say again.
Will the post infield, like the solid color, will that show up when you do Make 2D?
No, that's just a render setting. So if you use Make 2D to actually generate the line work, then that's just going to give you lines. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So here it is in like just an orthographic section in front view. So one of the things that Contrell's talking about is with this clipping plane, I could also, let's say I just want the line information here. I could do a make 2D, let's say, of this section. Select the objects to draw. I'm going to go ahead and select everything here, including that ground plane, hopefully. I'll just drag from right to left and select everything. All right. I'm going to say view, front view, clipping plane intersections. Yes, that'll actually put the stuff that's being cut through with the clipping plane on a different layer. So I can just select everything on that layer and beef them up. So this is another alternative if you wanted to. You can do a rendered part, or you can just do all line work with a make 2D. Let's see, scene silhouette. I'll add scene silhouette. Why not? Hidden lines. Actually, I'll turn scene silhouette off. Clipping plane intersections I want on though. And I'll hit OK. All right. So let's see what was generated here. At this point, maybe I'll just I'll select my clipping plane. I'll turn it off for a while. Right. So there's that section now drawn in the as a using make 2D drawn just as lines and curves. Right. And then what you can see is that it gave me, if you look in the layers, when I did that make 2D operation, it gave me a sort of master layer called make 2D, and underneath I have some other layers nested underneath: visible curves, and then clipping plane curves. Clipping plane curves is everything that's being cut through. And so I then, when I bring this out into Illustrator, for instance, in fact, let me just do that really quickly while I'm thinking about it. I can just select that all and say export selected. This is at full scale, so I can say, let's make it into an Illustrator file. Excuse me. I'll call this section test 01. Go to options here. Reserve model scale, and I'll say 1 foot. Or let's say, let's go with like 8 feet equals 1 inch. So 8 scale, right? For every inch in Illustrator, we'll have 8 feet from Rhino. Let's see, hatches exported solid fills. Didn't actually have any hatches. So go ahead and hit OK. Reserve model scale. Yep. I'm just going to hit OK. Okay. Right. So that's how you can start to use clipping planes. Let me just turn the clipping plane back on in perspective view. Oh, that's not what I was trying to hit. Where to go? There it is. Ta-da! All right. Go back to properties. Turn it on the parallel. I'll actually turn this to perspective. Maybe I'll flip the direction so I can see a little more of what's going on here. And maybe I'll pick a perspective that's really good at allowing me to sort of see everything that's going on here. Maybe I have an entrance back here and I have some grounds over here that I'll add some trees to, that sort of stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and turn off that layer that has the viewport. No, not the viewport, the clipping plane on it. So it doesn't just show up in my rendering. I'll turn off all the make 2D stuff. I'm just going to bring out a quick rendering of this, right? As a section perspective. In that case, I can just go to view, capture to file, bring out a PNG file. Transparent background. I'll just pick the scale of 1 is fine. What do I want to name it? What file type do I want to use? Save that bad boy to Illustrator. All right. Meantime, let's open up Illustrator and see what we have, right? So we'll take a look at the Make 2D orthographic line drawing. Then we can look at, for instance, this example of just sort of shutting the render mode. We don't actually have vectors. It's all sort of raster. It's all pixels. But then again, we have it for sort of formatted the way we want. So again, let's see here. Illustrator. Yeah, okay, right. Anyway, file, open. So let's open up that Illustrator file I made before. Check it out. All right. So there's a line drawing. All right. It's a little plain, but you get the idea. Now, what's interesting is if I go to the layers, I think you'll see that I have visible curves, clipping plane intersections. I'm going to go ahead and select those. I'm going to go ahead and beef up their line weight just a little bit here to like 2 or 3. And let's see, I'll go visible curves. I'll set those to just a standard 1 point. Last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to visible clipping plane intersections. I'll go back to those and select those. Oh, excuse me. What I can do is I can start to fill those in. So one of the ways I can do that is using a live paintbrush or live paint bucket that sort of like fills in closed shapes. And what I need to do is I need to select all of these objects that I want to use for that and go to object and say live paint and make a live paint group. Now, when I actually find that live paint bucket, which is buried behind the shape builder tool for some reason, which is unfortunate since I don't even know what the shape builder tool is. And the paint bucket tool seems much more useful to me. But as I sort of hold things over, it sort of finds all the closed shapes for me. So I know exactly what I'm filling in when I click my mouse button to fill it in, right? Okay. And then last but not least, I don't have a closed shape down here, but I could always just add, you know, some ground. I could make that into gradient if I wanted some sort of interesting flare there. Right. And so now it's up to me just to sort of, again, I'll just open up some of that entourage that we had before. Maybe. Open recent, maybe. Oh, come on. I forget where this stuff is. Tree silhouettes and plan. Aha. So those will come in useful in plan view, right? You can actually add tree silhouettes. But why don't I just pick a few of these? Copy. And paste. Of course, we can scale these up, scale them down, however you want. I'll move this one over here. I don't know why I insist on that symmetry. Let's see, what else? Let's try to break that up just a little bit. We always imply that there's a depth here to some of these things, right? So, come on. Just do that. What we can do is lighten some of these up in the foreground. Let's just go to their opacity level. It's down. Sorry, I have the zoom tools here in front for some reason. There we go. I don't think Zoom had Illustrator in mind when they designed the interface, probably. You know, just again, tone these down just a little bit so they're not, if this one's even further back, it can be even lighter, right? We could add humans and things like that, right? And it's the same thing. Just move this over. Maybe a little quicker than that. Come on, there we go. I'll just place that PNG that we also made inside the same Illustrator file. There's the view capture. Right, so what I'd like for you guys to do is to try a section perspective over the weekend, okay? I don't want you to have to do all this stuff. I want you to try a section perspective. And I would argue that if you know, grapple with the clipping planes, and then we can look at this on Monday. We can start to really use this stuff in your studio projects. We can develop it further as a drawing, a really lovely drawing in this class. All right, so for this weekend, that's what I'm burdening you with. Same thing here, right? I have this ground and it's being cut too, and it really bugs me that it's not that it's just plain. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that my fill color is set to black. I have no stroke color. I'm just going to draw the shape to this edge here. Right, there we go. And I'll just draw that inside of Illustrator. It kind of bugs me that I see a horizon, like the edge of the tabletop here because of that. So yeah, maybe there's a way to turn on the ground plane, an infinite ground plane, instead of having my own ground plane, or maybe I just needed to extend that wider so I don't see the edge. So that's something that to be mindful of. But again, from here, it's simply adding things, right? And again, this is section, but it's also perspective. So in this case, you'd need to make sure that you're what is it doing there? What's that doing? That you adhere to sort of the perspective, trying to make an accurate perspective and placing things within it appropriately. Sorry, I'm trying to do too many things at one time. You know how my windows lag sometimes? That's what my brain was just doing just now. It's kind of weird, but all right. So maybe I add a tree here as well, somewhere back in this. Come on now. Why are you being so stupid? All right, cool. All right. Just try to trash talk my laptop here. If I put this here and it's in the background, it's behind, I need to clip that out, right, with the clipping mask. I probably want to tone these down. They're quite dark. Just make a rule for myself. Maybe it's 75% or something. Or maybe even lighter than that. 50. Just as a quick refresher, if you don't want to have to go back and look that up, I'm gonna create a clipping mask for this tree so it looks like the building it's behind the building, or this wall anyway. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna make a shape. I'll use the pen tool here. I'll go click, click, click. Oh wait, I did that backwards. Let me just delete that and I'll start again. I'll try to act a little smarter for the rest of the day, hopefully. So here's the pen. I'm going to actually go around this edge like this. I'm going to draw a shape around all the parts of the tree I want to see, right? That's the clipping mask. It's like a window that everything outside of that clipping mask will then be gone. So I just drew this last, and I'll go ahead and select the tree underneath it as well. I'll say object, clipping mask make. Right. Okay, there we go. All right, so now it's starting to look a little better. I could add humans and all this other stuff, right? Okay. That's an Illustrator. If I want to do this in Photoshop, I could add sky and I could add, the site and things like that. But for right now, start simple and we can go from there. I kind of want to see how you're thinking about these things. And so, if I said, for instance, that let me just quickly annotate tools here. Like if I said, well, this is my entrance and this is a lobby. I have some information stuff and some other program like Cloakroom and stuff like that tucked away back here. Or maybe it's whatever. Maybe these are restrooms that are tucked back behind. The question is, well, where am I cutting this section? Do I show how people actually move up into this space? Do I show how this view is framed by this, and someone standing here could actually look out, right? Do I show how this could be used for receptions, looking down on the space below? Do I show what kind of view is being framed with this, or what kind of light is coming in through this, right? So those to me are like, you might do this over the weekend and then we come back on Tuesday and we go, let's shift this, let's tilt it, or let's move that cut plane, or maybe this is a good section, but you also need a second one showing this other condition. So in other words, we're starting this conversation now, because I think what you'll find is as you go is that here, come on now, here we go. These things really kind of matter, right? And so if we use these things to sort of help us design, then it'll become that much more clear at the end when you show these drawings, if you've sort of drafted them and refined them over a few weeks. That's my point. Okay. So taking that virtual model you have now and starting to cut it Feel free to do this with plan if you'd like, just to sort of look at those and start to label things and look, it's a way to sort of X-ray this thing in a different way. So you don't have to stop with just the plain Jane assignment, but what I'd like for you to do is to sort of really look at where do you want to cut the most interesting section through your studio project, past or present. If you're in my studio right now, then make sure it's your present. We'll have that conversation then about how to continue to develop it next week. All right. We'll start to also look at plans. You'll have the week to sort of investigate the plans and other sections and elevations. But then we'll be sort of back to back classes so we can sort of troubleshoot as you go. But I'm fairly confident that between this recording and what I've shown you before, that you guys can make a clipping plane and try to really look at what kind of section perspective you might want to investigate first here. Okay. We'll go ahead and stop sharing. And I'm going to stop recording.